This is a butcher's game. Uh, this is chapter 18, Criminally Insane. One night in 2022, I was staying in Bell Buckle, Tennessee. I seen someone running around the house messing with the windows, trying to get in to break into the house. The police were called. Once they left without looking around the yard, called a second time. The second time they arrested me because I had warrants in Lewisburg, Tennessee. So I didn't refuse. I cooperated, but I cooperated at that time. But I asked him to look around the house and he didn't. So I was angry about that. Then they took me away. There seemed to be someone in the front passenger seat, and they turned around when we got down the road and pointed a pistol at me, smiling and laughing while the officer was driving. He looked at the passenger seat and put his hand over his mouth like he wouldn't say anything, even though he was scared. He was so scared. I kept squirming so he couldn't get a good draw on me, and put my head and top body down in the floorboard so they couldn't draw down any vital places without stopping the car and getting out of it. Then we got to the county line of Marshall County and Bedford County to transfer me to Marshall County. I looked over in the Marshall County police car, and the seat in the passenger side lifted up. And there was someone in it too, and the cop was out of the car, got me out of the Bedford County car to put me into the Marshall County car. And I tried to hightail it up out of there because the ride it took just to get there was torture. I had to fight for my life, it seemed, and I could feel the same, if not worse. I could feel the same, if not worse, was going to happen when I got into the other police car. I know they were after my life, not incarceration. Also, the police were not calling in the mileage to dispatch or calling anything in to dispatch that night. Anyways, my attempt at running didn't get very far. They slammed me on the ground and also kept their knees in my back, almost snapping my shoulders out of socket because my handcuffs were still on behind my back. And they were lifting my arms higher and higher until I screamed so much as to wake up the surrounding neighbors. Then the police backups arrived and they lifted me into a Marshall County police car, but they drove a little on the Marshall County side and pulled over on the side of the road. Got out of the car, rolled up all the windows and cracked mine about half an inch, and proceeded to spray pepper spray. They sprayed me in the eyes and all in the car with mace, and I told him that I had breathing problems. They kept me in the back with the windows up, spraying and spraying. I was yelling and kicking the door of the police car. I told them I was yelling and kicking the door of the police car, trying to kick the windows out because it was hard to breathe, and they just continued to do it until the K9 got there. The dogs. There, they kept opening the back doors of the police car, one side after another, with the dogs barking and going crazy. They were trying to make the dogs bite me, jump in a police car on me, but it wouldn't come too close to me. because of the amount of pepper spray they hit me with. But at the same instant, it was very, very scary, and I was trying to kick at the dogs. Now I should tell you that I don't have breathing problems, but I said I did. Remember, before the dogs got there, God put the revelation in my head and in my mouth to say that I had breathing problems. And I remember thinking I have to say breathing problems so they will keep spraying me and won't stop to try something else or to try to kill me any other way. And turns out it worked. God knew that they were going to do that with the canines, but the whole time I was screaming and praying, crying, and almost dying. Then God put another revelation in my head. I believed to tell them I was overdosing and also screamed until they called an ambulance. So by now, the cuffs were tightening on my wrist, and I was bleeding out of them where I couldn't feel my hands. I told them, they said, "We don't care," and laughed. And I was bleeding out of my wrist because of the cuffs cutting into my skin. The ambulance got there. They left the cuffs on, put me on the gurney, strapped me down tight from head to ankles. I had my handcuffs in the back, so I was laying on them. They were way past numb, my hands and arms were, and bleeding. I imagine they were turning blue or black. Then all of the paramedics and police gathered around me and rubbed something on the inside of my hoodie pocket and again tried to make the canines attack me in the back of the ambulance. I was shackled on my ankles, cuffed, and strapped down on the gurney, but God was with me, and the dogs never mauled me. Thank you, Jesus, for that. The ambulance had nothing in the back of it, no machinery or anything. I could tell it was an old one. The police and the ambulance drivers surrounded me and were debating right in front of me on throwing me into a river to drown me, just like since I was cuffed and shackled and strapped down. So I bucked and bucked until I know people come out of their porches. So they took me to the hospital. Oh, the whole time there was a cop spraying me with pepper spray. Every so often he was spraying it in my hoodie. Even when I got into the hospital, Lewisburg Hospital, I was still freaking out on the police that were surrounding me, and now the correctional officers from Lewisburg jail. And they were telling the nurses I was lying about all this and that I was crazy. The nurses gave me a shot. I believe it was Haldol, but I'm not sure. I remember saying to God, "Father, please forgive them, for they know not what they are doing," and I passed out. When I woke up, there were no police anywhere. I was still in the hospital. A nurse came in and I told her I was hungry. She told me she would come with food, but I needed to call a ride home because I was free to go. Then I fell back asleep. It amazed me because I had warrants in Lewisburg and they just let me go. Then I fell back asleep. The nurses woke me up and fed me a really good breakfast. I fell back asleep and woke up hours later, called a ride, and also I told them I had $20 that should be to give to the people coming to pick me up, because that's what I had in my pockets before the police got me. But I didn't have it when they released me. The cops had borrowed it, I guess. I even had warrants in Lewisburg and they didn't arrest me. Also, I couldn't feel my hands for weeks because of the cuffs. About a week after the incident, I was in Bell Buckle, Tennessee, sitting in a rocker outside the diner. It was closing time. No one else was out there, and this woman comes out the diner and says, "I'm surprised you still have all your fingers." This, my friends, was no coincidence. My hands were still kind of numb at this time. And for a few weeks after, you see, just like a person can speak for God without knowing who they are talking about or the details of the situation, so can a person speak out for evil without being aware. I asked the woman what she said, and she said nothing, but she clearly did then later on. Later on, I would receive charges and warrants for destroying a police car in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and receive a judgment of 11 months and 29 days probation for it when the crime was in Lewisburg, Tennessee. A Lewisburg City police car. When I finally got charged with it and wound up in jail in Shelbyville, Tennessee, the jailers gave me my $20 back. I still have to do the time on that when I get released from Lewisburg jail. And to top that all off, when I see some of the narcotics officers, they put their finger to their lips and signal me to be quiet, then run a finger across their throat, signaling me to be quiet or you will be killed. But they can't touch me because I'm God's anointed and He has my back. It's not by a person's own strength or wit that a person overcomes and has victory. Strength, real strength, comes only from God. I love you, Jesus, so much, so very, very much. All these things happen, but I don't raise my voice to complain. Not because I am scared of them, which I'm not scared. If any human or anything but God, and I'm not scared of any human or anything but God, and He is on my side. But I kept my complaint to myself because I think about Jesus being crucified. He was beaten, He was tortured, but He didn't say a word, like a lamb being led to the slaughter. He took it in silence. He died without a thought to His own welfare. This is my highest ambition, to be an exact reflection of Jesus, my twin. Therefore, just like Him, I will look death in the face and not flinch. Lord willing, and always remember this: no king succeeds with a big army alone. No warrior wins by brute strength. Horsepower is not the answer. No one gets by on muscle alone. God is great all the time, and He always keeps His eyes on His friends. Everything works together for the good of those who loved Him and are called according to His will.